Hello, everybody, and welcome to a belated episode this week of the Yobagoya Fantasy Football Podcast. This is week 3, and wow, what a week we've had. Here I am, Dom O'Brien, with my co-host Jamie.
Hello, everybody. Do apologise for the belatedness. I've been a bit ill and also had some business to attend to, but we're back in it. Apologise for my voice this week. I'm definitely a bit under the weather, but powering through. Got to get the words out to the people. It's good to be heard, and it's good to hear your voice, Tom.
Thank you very much. So, what are the main stories this week, Jamie, as you see it?
I think we got to go forward. Biggest story of the week was yourself versus Sam. Um, I think also there's sort of like my game, not for its competitive nature. Although there was a point where Adam definitely caught up, but my points total could be contender for the largest points
Gargantuan
for the year.
total.
Gargantuan total, but that was a huge storyline going forward. And also there was some nice results across the league. Some interest, definitely in more interesting games than last week. We did have a few blowouts on week 1, so this definitely week 2. If this shapes out to be a league-wide or sort of season-long points sort of total projections, we're going to have a very interesting season and definitely a curious postseason.
Yeah, I mean, a bizarre week in the NFL. We saw a number of great running back performances, which didn't involve actually running the ball. A lot of PPR monsters this week. Really good stuff, and monster wide receiver performances as well. A couple of those in my matchup for sure, with Diggs and Michael Thomas giving me multiple heart palpitations,
headaches.
Yeah,
headaches, strokes,
all of it really.
All of every cognitive destroying medical condition conceivable. Yeah, I was watching your game more than I was watching my game, to be honest.
It was a bit like that.
It was. But let's move forward. Do you want to cover some of the more interesting waiver wire pickups first and then move on to the recap?
Yeah, fairly quiet week on the waiver wire. As you'd expect, week 1 is kind of the week where everyone either panics or drops their injured players, etc., etc. A couple of interesting spots. I picked up Javorius Allen. Had to drop the man, John Brown. Not doing it for me.
Are you sure? Are you sure about that? My list says you dropped John Ross.
John Brown. Don't get your Johns confused.
Potato, AFC North. Who are these guys?
That's it, AFC
bums.
North.
They're bums.
They're bums. I'm not sure about that. So John Brown, who remains on my team, is certainly not a bum. But John Ross, who is now on the waiver wire, probably a bum. Don't pick him up.
I would tend to disagree, but he's certainly not anything more than a cautionary flex option. If you're struggling for points on your flex, give him a look. But if you feel comfortable with your wide receiver options and your flex choice, leave him out in the ether. Can maybe come back at week 6 or maybe see how he's playing out.
I mean, on the season, he currently has 2 receptions for 11 yards.
Yeah,
not the most inspiring numbers.
And we know why.
Yes.
But
other moves
red
though.
Rifle.
Yeah, the red rifle. Praise be. Other moves, looking at Antonio Callaway was picked up after that monster touchdown he had last week.
Absolutely.
Reese grabbed him. I see you picked up Carson Wentz as well.
I did. Pulled the trigger. I mean, anyone would be sort of batting eyelids to have the prospect of having Andrew Luck and Carson Wentz go through your team while still having Deshaun Watson. Don't know how I've managed to achieve it, but certainly people looking to pick up a quarterback, I would consider Andrew Luck every day, every week. I just think Carson Wentz has the potential to do better because he has a better offensive line.
Yeah, let's not get it twisted. You and I, both card-holding members of the Andrew Luck fan club. Anyone who would like to join, please consult us for details on membership. But yeah, Carson Wentz and the Eagles, you'd like to think there will be some sort of offensive uptick there with the
Yeah,
Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles dropping to the bench? You'd hope so.
probably where he belongs at this point. I
You're
mean, not to
probably
take
right.
away what he's done, but some of those games that he's played, in the end of the regular season last year and the beginning of this season, raise more questions than they have answers. If you want to put it that way. Couple of interesting moves around the league with kickers actually.
Kickers, kickers,
Um,
kickers.
Greg the Legs Erline with the groin injury, not playing at all in week 2, being replaced by Sam Ficken, and of course your boy, owner of Greg the Leg, swapping out for Sam Ficken. The wise move. Dan playing his cards to his chest, wants to keep that LA Rams kicking points on his team. Can't blame him really. Understandable. That's a surefire offense. Maybe the best, but maybe Andy Reid wants to have quiet words with Sean McVay. But we'll see as the season pans out. And myself, I've managed to jinx 2 of the long-standing stalwarts of the kicking league. And I've decided to try it 3 for 3 by picking up Dan Bailey, who was signed by the Vikings this weekend.
Yeah, just on the subject of Dan's Greg the Leg movements, really some fascinating stuff going on here. Dan actually dropped Greg with his groin injury on September 19th, so the first day of waivers. Picked up David Njoku, tight end from Cleveland. $20 bid. Quite substantial. Only to then drop him the next day for Sam Ficken at the cost of another $10. So, the answer is out there somewhere, I'm sure, but it seems like while we're all playing fantasy football, Dan is playing 3D interdimensional chess, checkers, mahjong, something that is far beyond our comprehension.
I look forward to seeing The Art of the Deal 2 by Dan.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump, eat your heart out.
Okay, I think that wraps that up for sure. I'm interested to get into the recap for week 2. I'm sure you're champing at the bit as well.
You know me.
Where do you want to go first? Do you want me to start?
Go on.
Do you want to
Take it away, my friend.
All right, then. So I'm going to do this in reverse order to how I've prepared it, actually. And I'm going to leave the marquee game, yourself versus Sam, for last on my rotation. The game I'm going to talk about first is Miami Chris, the Crystal Ball, versus Mark. And I did say last week that this could have the potential for being the lowest scoring game of week 2. Maybe a tad overzealous, but I came close. It was, 20 points, 10 points in it. Chris got very good production across his entire team. Every player sort of cracking 10 points and above in the middle teens. And the game-winning total of 128. No one's going to be ashamed of that, and everyone's going to be happy with that. Flipping to Mark, he had the season debut, Sony Michel, the stalwart rookie of New England, said to be a great addition. He does look impressive on the tape. However, it didn't translate to points, unfortunately, for Mark. But he could have some good weeks with Sony Michel once he gets acclimated to this New England offense. He looks like he can catch footballs as well. James White could be a future available waiver wire selection for you people out there if it starts to go that way, for sure. Unfortunately for Mark, some of his high draft picks are starting to underwhelm in these early weeks, and you have to think perhaps they're going to settle into some early season adjustments and he starts scoring points again. A player I will highlight for Chris was Matt Ryan. He's threw himself into 30 points. Huge point total for a quarterback, but not the largest for a quarterback this week. And for Mark, Adam Thielen did some great work. 25.1 points. That's something you'll take every week.
Great stuff. I'd like to jump into your game, facing our reigning and defending champion, Adam. This was one of the, if not the biggest, blowout of the week. We've already mentioned your gargantuan points total, 160.7. Lovely stuff. And that was with Chris Boswell putting up a measly 2, and your number 1 pick, David Johnson, with a an ever-depressing 5.6 as the Arizona Cardinals failed to cross midfield until the fourth quarter. But some great totals on your side, really. Enviable stuff. AJ Green with 27.4 on the Thursday night. Juju Smith-Schuster just looked incredible. What a player, what a young player he is. Brandon Cooks in that blowout against Arizona, great stuff. And Travis Kelce was, he was in the shootout of the week against Pittsburgh. So really, it was a recipe for success for your side. For our champion, however, as we saw the first defense of his, or the second defense of his belt, the first turnover of the belt's ownership. Phillip Rivers had a nice 21 points, but that game was over really before it got going against Buffalo. Otherwise, we're just really looking at Tyreek Hill and the NFL rushing leader, perhaps surprisingly Matt Breida with 23.4. But what really hampered Adam this week was, he didn't have the performance of Julio Jones that he'd had the week before. Same with Lamar Miller. Royce Freeman seems to be encountering some trouble in securing that real dominant load in the backfield. Jordan Reed, the ever questionable one, didn't put up the numbers you'd hope, especially against Indianapolis, who you'd expect to have a porous defense. And the husk of Jordy Nelson, once a great player, he's just going through the motions, it seems, really, much like a lot of that Oakland team. And as a result, Adams dropped him to waivers this week, I see. So tough stuff, but I'm sure he'll bounce back.
I can't argue with that drop. One thing I'd like to throw at you, some statistics. So top 5 receiving leaders through week 2. Number 1, Deshaun Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, Michael Thomas. Number 3, Tyreek Hill. Big name receivers, you expect them to be in this class. All of them on different teams. 4 and 5, number 4, Brandon Cooks. Number 5, Juju Smith-Schuster. Both on my team. And while I questioned my wide receiver picking choice, I think I've made some good choices here in potentially seeing myself having the highest scoring wide receiver group this season.
I don't think that's a bold claim at all, my friend.
No, not at all. Okay, moving on. The next game we're going to talk about was Ryan versus... I don't think I've written this down properly.
Incredible stuff.
How have I done that? Ryan versus Tom. Yeah. For some reason, my notes are wrong. It's Ryan versus Tom, not what I've written. I won't repeat what I've written.
Okay, that's probably for the best.
A week 2 victory for Tom. And as we spoke about with him last week, he's got a very good team. And he did suffer with a few injuries coming into that game, or sort of during the week. Jay Ajayi potentially being the biggest one, leaving the game midway with a back injury. Did relent a large point score to Corey Clement. Did return, though, which maybe helped him reach that 9.2 total. Not that the victory was ever really in question. This game was the lowest scoring game, so... but again, not by very much. So the hope here is that we're going to see a lot more competition this season instead of these sort of lopsided blowouts with the 2 top sort of 3 or 4 teams in the league. As for Ryan, man, did he get beat up this week. LaShawn McCoy suffering that cracked rib after an offensive lineman dropped on him.
Ouch.
Joe Mixon sort of mailing in a fairly good performance and then blowing out his knee after the game. And Jack Doyle leaving against Washington and relenting snaps to Eric Ebron. And some of these other performances are something to be concerned about. Robbie Anderson putting in a 1.2.
Yikes.
You're starting to look at this Jets team and, Robbie Anderson and Jermaine Kearse were the top targets last year. This isn't the case anymore. Quincy and Newell, he's your boy. He's your boy, and you're seeing it in the point totals. From the top down, Ryan's got players who can put up big points, but they got to stay on the field, and they've got to put in the snaps. Otherwise, he's going to start trending downwards. The only real player of note here is for Tom's team, Kirk Cousins, smashing the 30-point mark in that incredible game between the Packers and the Vikings.
Mm,
You know, you look at it, another tie week 2. Can we get 3 in a row? I mean, I'd like to see it.
that's what we're all here for, really.
Absolutely.
I think the 14.9 from Alvin Kamara as well, we probably saw his floor this week. He is an incredible player, and I think that will probably be his lowest total of the season, and it was still pretty good numbers as far as I'm concerned.
Do we have slight concerns that the Saints are kind of relying on Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara solely to move the football?
I mean, we've seen numerous Sean Payton offenses throughout the years. Yes, it's a concern, but we've seen this before. We know how it works out. They probably won't win as many games as they should, but that offense will still keep putting up yards and putting up points.
I wouldn't be surprised if they end the season 9-7, but Drew Brees is always good for 5,000 yards, and those yards are going to go to someone. And the only people catching the football consistently are Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas. So these could be huge years for both of them.
Good stuff. I think jump into next Paul against Reese. Paul, I like Paul's team a lot. I thought he was he was going to give Tom a very close game week 1, and I was kind of leaning towards one of those two being the division winners. But Paul slipped up here, only 87 points on the week. The Ravens defense let him down, -2 points. It's never a great start. Robbie Gould, though, at the kicker spot, had a lovely 14. But aside from that, not too much going on. Evan Ingram, of course, had 16.2. Keenan Allen and Cooper Kupp both floating around 10, but you'd like to think on another week they'd probably be, probably close to double that. Aaron Rodgers still feeling the effects of the injury. Really tough stuff for Paul, as I think the pieces around a lot of his players or the game situations limited his points total for this week. And of course, Leonard Fournette being injured.
Absolutely. Also, Kenny Golladay sitting on his bench could have used those points there.
The smooth routes.
I think this is a tale of the player who should for Paul. Aaron Rodgers should be scoring over 20 points a game. Or that's at least what you would expect him to do. That's why you draft him as high as he was drafted for Paul's team. You would expect him to consistently score 25 points every week. So, there's 10 points missing there. Alex Collins at 10.5, I'm happy with that. In that Ravens offense against their opponents on the early part of the schedule, these are teams that have played them a lot. They know how they want to run the football and they know how to limit it. So 10.5, I'm comfortable with that for Alex Collins. Sorry, Chris Carson, slight concern. That Bears defense is for real, and any running back that you have facing the Bears defense, you must seriously consider whether you want to play them. Like, this is going to be a real thing all season, and a lot of it is not even to do with Khalil Mack. He's just creating opportunities for more sacks. That run defense was legit before Khalil Mack joined the fray. So these are questions we need to ask ourselves when our players are playing in the Chicago defense. And unfortunately, Paul got bit by the snake here.
Are the Chicago Bears defense owned in our league?
I believe so. Yeah, someone has them.
Oh, I'm sure someone has them. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yes. Oh, wonderful stuff.
Foresight. The man had foresight. On the flip side, we see some Reese's team just scoring points where he needs to. Larry Fitzgerald is going to be concerned, and he's got some questionables across the board. So that may be a problem moving forward.
Some nice pickups from Reese though in the week. I know he's a listener of this podcast, so we'll give you a shout out, Reese. TJ Yeldon came up with 8 points in relief of the injured Leonard Fournette. Also see Corey Clement, 17 on the bench. Might be something interesting going forward, especially if their offense does improve with Carson Wentz at the helm. Good stuff.
I would certainly consider Corey Clement a higher points threshold player now, a high flex option with Carson Wentz back in the lineup because he did like to outlet to Corey Clement, and that's kind of why they got Jay Ajayi, because they wanted to have a change of pace hammer alongside LeGarrette Blount, and Corey Clement was the third down catch it running back.
I mean, I think it could be inferred, as the Eagles have called a running back up from the practice squad this week, that maybe Jay Ajayi's injury might hamper him for more than just this game. So maybe Corey Clement could be a fine start in the weeks going forward. Yeah, running back is always a crapshoot at best. So here we go, the man with the hot hand.
Moving swiftly on to I would say the game of the week. I'll put it out there.
Okay.
It's Dom
Yeah.
versus Sam. And, for anyone who was watching the entire scoreboard across the league, I know there was a few of us for sure, this was the game everyone was watching all throughout Sunday afternoon into the late evening. We were just watching. At one point, Dom's points were flying up the board. Then suddenly Sam was making the gap even tighter. And by the end of Sunday night, Sam had 130 points. Dom was down to 100 and 110, 114. He still had two of his biggest players, Jordan Howard and Odell Beckham, to play. And of course, that Bears defense. And by the time the dust had settled, you'd vaulted over Sam to 146 to 135. It was a relatively comfortable win by the end of it, but there was certainly some drama going on. Particularly when you look at your bench, there were three players there who could have put you over the edge. I mean, from here, you left 37. You left 33 points on the bench, and if you played those players, you're looking at an incredible total score for the week, smashing last year's season's record. You're talking 170 odd points. So your team's outlook is fantastic, but so is Sam's. Scoring 135 is a big deal, and that's a game-winning score. And some huge shout-outs players-wise. Stephon Diggs for Sam, totaling the team high 31.4. What a performance for a wide receiver. That's huge.
Quite obscene.
And for Dom, another savvy pickup, if you will, with Patrick Mahomes. Huge dividends, 37.4 team high. The highest scoring quarterback through 2 weeks, other than Fitzmagic.
Of course. Just as we predicted.
It won't end. It just won't end.
Look.
Every week, I'm coming here excited to talk about Fitzmagic just because I know it upsets you.
I think our fantasy season is 15 weeks long? They didn't make 15 Harry Potter books. It's not happening. But yeah,
I mean,
if it was anything but a comfortable week. Oh, the chest hair, yes, of course.
The chest hair is mine.
Great stuff. It was anything but a comfortable week for me. I'm just hoping that the other weeks aren't going to be like that. Had a wonderful moment with Sam on the early hours of Monday morning. I woke up, checked my phone, saw I had a message from Sam, checked the score after the Sunday night games, saw I was behind. Here I had a message from Sam with a screenshot of the scoreboard saying GG. Good stuff, Sam. So no, not to worry, on Tuesday morning we saw the Bears. The mighty Bears vaulted me over Sam, winning scores. Just fire that text back. No worries, buddy. Thank you for the win.
Fantastic.
So if we go on to the last review of the week, I think this was in fact the closest game. Fraser versus Dan. Dan now up to 2-0. Fraser 0-2. 116.8 for Fraser, 119.9 for Dan. And it actually came down to the final drive of the Broncos versus Raiders. So Dan, the Raiders fan, he had Amari Cooper with 16.6. Great stuff. Out of nowhere. And I watched thinking my boy Fraser was going to pick up his first win of the year. And I watched as Demarius Thomas let the ball hit his hands 5 times and dropped the ball 5
Yeah.
times. 5 drops on the day. All the work of OJ Howard, Sammy Watkins, McCaffrey, T.Y. Hilton, just as we predicted last week, these players with high ceilings coming in with big numbers. And then Demarius Thomas with the 5 drops, the Panthers defense with the -2. And just like that, the dream was dead. And Dan goes on to 2-0.
An insurmountable mountain. Demarius Thomas, well known for his ability to drop the football as it is to catch the football. As a Demarius Thomas owner, I've been in that situation where I've been watching the game and I've watched him run an out route, easy 25 yards, touchdown, and the ball just hits the turf. It's soul destroying, and it's those kind of drops that could have won you the game. And you do feel for Fraser here, you know. It could have gone the other way quite easily. Dan did appear in some points of the early Sunday games to be struggling, particularly after his huge blowout win of week 1.
All right, let's move on to the previews of this week's matchups.
Absolutely.
You want to go first?
You want me to start again?
Go on.
Absolutely. We'll start with Fraser versus Dom. And for me, it's all about potential in this matchup. Patrick Mahomes for yourself, what's his potential? We can see that this is going to be a huge offense, but is it going to be the Kansas City curse again? Andy Reid's had all off season to plan this offense, and then everyone catches up. I don't see it happening that way. Patrick Mahomes is a special talent. That's a huge arm, and he's going to be able to make some plays Alex Smith can't. So that playbook is probably going to be very impressive. For Fraser, you've got, can his big time performers perform big time again and get him over the hill? And does he trust them to do it? Is he going to make some changes? Will he utilize some of his bench players? Is he going to take that risk? But unfortunately, you know, you're looking up and down his bench. He's got some unfortunate problems. Rob Kelly going to IR. Alshon Jeffrey still questionable, although could play against Indianapolis. And Paul Richardson also questionable. These players on top of their game could put in huge point totals, which could come to at least make you sweat a little bit during the week.
So, who do you think's going to win?
I think it's going to be the redeemed team. I think they're going to leave this 1-2-1 simply because, yeah, as we said before, Fraser is relying on his big players to play big, and some of them have ups and downs. If Demarius Thomas pops off along with T.Y. Hilton, DeAndre, LeGarrette Blount, if they all go off, he could win this. But it's safer. The safer pick is Dom. And that's where I'm going to go.
I'm glad you said that because that's what I wanted to hear. All right, I'll have a look at your matchup against Mark. Thing stands out to me is really Mark's been unfortunate. Lev Bell no longer on the Steelers depth chart. Emotional stuff. Devonta Freeman injured. Sony Michel coming back from an injury. It's tough, especially if you're a running back owned by Mark. In terms of upside, maybe Jared Cook will have a monster game. Maybe Russell Wilson will do something great, but their offense is disgusting, quite frankly. Thielen, Funchess, and Stills, all capable of great things, but whether it's all going to happen, I'm not so sure. But hey, on Jamie's side, well, we know how this can work out. Carson Wentz, we're very excited to see him back. Good stuff. Philip Lindsay, out of nowhere, one of the leading rushers in the league. Third, in fact, with 178 rushing yards. It's just, you know, sitting pretty over here at 2-0. We've got AJ Green, Juju Smith-Schuster, Brandon Cooks, that delightful wide receiver core. And really, as you go down, the one name that stands out to me as a potential weakness is David Johnson. And who would have thought that coming into week 3? It's a pretty nice spot to be in if you're Jamie. And I think he's going to take it this week.
Oh, I'm glad you say that. I feel this will be a more comfortable week for me. I've got Storms ahead, but I'll take a win where I can take a win, and of course anything can happen. But I feel I've got a potential to greater win. I believe this is the greatest line that we've got this week, something like 30 point line, I think.
Everyone loves an underdog.
So yeah. So good luck, Mark. I want you to win it.
That's a lie.
Where do we want to go next?
I want
Shall
to
we
take
go
a look at Sam versus Dan, if you don't mind.
Oh, you please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I need to get this off my chest because I know there's a lot of feeling in this matchup. These boys have been friends for years, and the fantasy football discussions in our little group chat that we have are limited at best. Not rife with knowledge, I'm afraid. That's how it is, unfortunately. But there's a lot of pride. I already mentioned Sam's gloating text messages on the Monday morning. These boys care. We're not always sure what we care about, but we definitely care. And I think Dan might be 3-0 come the end of the week. His team looks a little bit like a juggernaut, if you ask me. Todd Gurley, yes, a slightly more difficult matchup, but the Rams look unstoppable as far as I'm concerned. Golden Tate just always points somehow. Amari Cooper, I mean, how do we feel about Miami? We have no idea, but Amari Cooper looked pretty good last week. Back to himself. Rob Gronkowski, he's quite good. And James Conner, well, he's come out of nowhere and he's looking like an RB1. And when you got probably two of the top 3 or 4 running backs in fantasy and you got them both on your team, that is the easiest way to walk to wins. And as much as I like Sam's team, Saquon Barkley has been great the first 2 weeks, just on the long touchdown runs. Michael Thomas, Stephon Diggs, and Deshaun Jackson were all 3 were incredible against me. I'm just not sure if it's going to work out the same way 2 weeks in a row, and I think Dan's going to take this one in what will be certainly a eventful weekend in terms of banter and personal attacks.
Absolutely. I think if Sam plays it right, he could put Dan on a run for his money. But there are some players here that he may want to consider moving on from. Josh Gordon could be one of them.
Oh,
he's with New England.
Not Josh.
He's with New England now. How much is he going to assimilate into the offense? Is this just a flyer from Bill Belichick? And Derrick Henry has not panned out as great as we thought he would. We wanted him to take over the RB1 duties, but he's not quite there yet. I think Dan's also going to win this. And I want it to be a more competitive match, but we could see it being another Dan blowout similar to week 1.
When Josh Gordon looks like Randy Moss in that Patriots offense, it's all going to be fine. Don't you worry.
Don't put that on me.
Come on then.
Don't put that on me. Right. I think the next game we're going to look at is Adam versus Chris. The Crystal Ball, Miami Chris. The only man with 3 nicknames in the league.
Yeah.
This is looking like a very interesting game. It could literally come down to the last minutes of players playing in their games. And we see a Ryan Fitzpatrick being marched out from Adam. Is this the week that Ryan Fitzmagic gets bit? It is against a Pittsburgh defense that is reeling. They know they can play better, a whole Pittsburgh team that can play better, and they want to play better. Could we see a vicious sort of spiral from Fitzpatrick? Certainly possible. But up and down both depth charts, you've got players who can put up 20 points, and that might be the difference maker here. And I think the edge may be to Chris, although I would say that Adam's going to win this simply because he's had the more consistent performers, but it could go either way. It's a coin flip game for me.
That seems pretty fair. You want to take the next one as well?
Yeah, so we'll go We'll go Ryan and Paul. Um, this one again. There's a lot of questions here, injury wise. Aaron Rodgers still questionable. Leonard Fournette, what's he going to be like? Is the hamstring going to come and bother him? And Evan Ingram at tight end, he's also questionable. For Ryan, he's got a big hole to fill with Joe Mixon. The man was looking like he was going to put up a good RB1 sort of season, and he's now got a big hole to fill. And unfortunately, this running back group could come back to haunt him. But he does have the greatest insurance policy. He already had Giovanni Bernard, pardon me, and this is the man who's going to get the bulk of carries. So plug him right in, and I think you could see not necessarily equal points performance, but you're certainly going to get yards out of Bernard, and you'll see the occasional touchdown, which could help him start bolstering his points. I think Paul's going to win this one, finally get himself in the win column, and it'll be good to see.
Good stuff. Right, I'll take my final game. Looking at Reese versus Tom, two guys sitting at 2-0. It's another personal rivalry. The work colleagues meeting up here for the first time this season. And it's going to be a close one. The predictions certainly think so. They reckon 0.5 points in it in favour of Reese. And I really think this is going to be the one to watch this week. We got some heavy hitters on both sides, probably across every single position. Drew Brees, Kirk Cousins, Zeke and Kamara, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams. A couple of questionables at wide receiver as well. Larry Fitz for Reese, Jarvis Landry for Tom. I think this is going to be really, really exciting. And I think I'm going to lean towards... And this is I've changed my mind here at the last minute, which is always risky. I'm going to lead towards Tom.
Okay.
And my thinking is, I'm assuming Will Fuller is going to be healthy. And I am very excited by the prospect of him against the Giants. George Kittle against the Chiefs. Yes, okay, he hasn't blown our minds against Detroit. But the Chiefs have given up a touchdown to the tight end in both games so far this season. So you'd expect, with the way they use Kittle in San Francisco, he's probably going to score again. Nelson Aguilar, Carson Wentz coming back. He's looking great. And I think, the matchups maybe slide away from Reese. Mike Evans still going to put up points we'd expect. Marshall Lynch, questionable. And then you look at the depth. Is Rex Burkhead really what we'd expected? He's not been great so far this season. Alfred Morris is Alfred Morris. Probably the less said about him, the better. And then the rest of his bench, maybe Jamal Williams could have a good day. TJ Eldon could have a day, but even he's questionable now. But I definitely think, I know I've sounded off a bit negative there on Reese's team. I do think this will be a close one. Maybe Reese's team a bit too top heavy, whereas Tom has the strength and depth. And I think that's going to be what sees him to the victory this week.
Yeah, one concern for Reese, Larry Fitzgerald, came out of the game, and this Arizona offense is abysmal
really
from
bad.
Top down. Really bad. Historically bad, in fact. Only 5 first downs against the Rams.
Disgraceful.
So that is a huge concern. And for Tom, the Will Fuller is an injury-prone player, just like the Texans roster. And Jarvis Landry, I've seen him play questionable before, and although the man always catches the football, he's a PPR monster. During games where he's questionable, he can struggle a little bit to move off the block, which can cause problems for him. So there are enough places here where someone can gain the edge from someone else's misfortune, and it is a very close game. I lean towards Tom simply because the depth here has the potential to produce multiple 20-point performers. whereas Reece is sort of relying on Drew Brees and Ezekiel and Mike Evans to score the bulk of his points and then sort of make up the rest with his other performers.
So go on then. Take us on to the last game of the week.
Have we not done them all?
Have we not done them all? Am I getting too excited?
I think we have.
I think we have done them all. Oh, look at that. The week comes around and you just wish there was more.
Absolutely. Well, I get excited now every week to do this podcast and also get excited every week to see the trash talking in the group chat and also to see the points on the board. So hopefully some more people will be around on Sunday to talk some trash and spin some ideas in the group chat. I'll certainly be hanging around. I know you'll be there.
I'll be there.
Absolutely. And once again, thank you very much for listening. It's a privilege and an honour to be able to speak our way through our fantasy league, and we thoroughly enjoy it, and we hope you enjoy it too.
Yeah, thank you ever so much, guys. Will be perhaps another guest arrival next week. Fingers crossed. So thank you all for listening. Good luck for the week, unless you're playing one of us. Goodbye.
Goodbye.